have a lot of discussions going on in this time, and this pandemic has really been affecting every single one of us. So this was just one way that we could encourage our students and get them to understand a lot about what's happening in the world. And Earth Day is it's been there for a really long time. Some of us know its purpose, and some of us really don't understand it, maybe. So what happens is that we want our students to also figure out what this is, and we have very, very talented people out here with us today. We have Ms. Shamla Prabhu. We have always known her from our Triple ID work. We have been associated with her for quite some time now. She's the principal architect of Akriti Architects and Designers. And we have Ms. Arundhati Kumar, who's the founder of Studio Beach. It's a fashion accessories and sustainability oriented, design oriented field that is there. And also we have Ms. Rashmi Chakrabarti, who's the BDM of NSF Safety and Certification India. She's also working with a lot of with sustainability in mind. And we have Ms. Lavanya Goradia, who is the principal architect of Studio Alaya, who is also a sustainability oriented architect. I want to welcome all of you to this very, very good panel. We want to make something good out of it. I hope all of us will learn something new today. So when we start with talking about sustainability in general, we are always confused with whether it is only about low cost or whether it is something just about the material which is there. This is one major confusion that some of our students do come up with. We have a variety of students who have come here. Some of them are doing their thesis projects, some of them are doing their research projects, and both from fashion, jewelry, and interiors. We have various kinds of students. Ms. Shamla, can you answer what do we start with? Where do we really look at ourselves, and what can you tell us?
Let me start with, say, for example, today's topic. Okay, what you've started with saying that restore the earth, that itself, it again depends on how we approach that topic. Okay, as living beings, personally, I feel that, the way we say it, it's in a rather condescending way. But the truth is that the nature or Mother Earth or planet Earth can sustain itself. It's we who need the earth. So it is our survival that is dependent. Okay, so when we have something like a Earth Day, I feel it's more like there is this alarm clock which we have to set, because every time we get complacent, it needs to go out. And when that particular day comes, then we have to wake up and start being aware and again spread awareness amongst us. So with that comes, sustainability and conservation. All these, is something which we're hearing quite a bit these days. And it's good. At least there is a thought process which has started. So what, as students at least, if it's good that you started at the student level, because everything, you take simple things like when people say that I want to diet, then what is it they say? Make a lifestyle change. In the similar way, when it comes to interiors, it is about making a lifestyle change. It is about making correct choices. At least if your thought process is in place, then there is this chance of achieving something. Saving wood or paper, largest consumption of material, I feel, is in the interior and architecture profession. And it's not just about consumption. We create equal amount of waste. So it is the thought process which needs to start when you're studying itself as to how you are going to use less is more. How are you going to use minimal resources from the nature to create what is necessary, and how you're going to work towards not creating that waste. So I think this awareness program, starting as a student, I would say it should go back, way back, as in school. Simple things like if you can really finish your bath in a bucket of water, then try that. All of this natural resource, how are we going to save it? And these are all mindsets, and these little things will cascade into something bigger. Yeah. Eventually, as we speak, I will tell you as to how we are propagating or spreading the awareness amongst us professionals ourselves. as of now, I feel as students, think and start now when you're designing how you're going to conserve, how you're going to use material that can sustain. When you say sustain, that whatever you use, you have to make sure it gets replenished somewhere.
Yeah.
You just can't keep using and you can't empty it, right? It's just like how money is. If you're going to spend the money you've earned, you have to figure out how you're going to replenish it, right? So the same thought process has to work in your profession as well.
So I had the opportunity to look at Studio Beach. I just went through their website and I really was very fascinated with how you started with this. I want to understand, I'm sure all of us want to understand, where did you really start and what really made you start going towards sustainability actually?
It's this meeting has this discussion has come at such an opportune time, and I was listening to Shamla speak, and I was thinking that sustainability has become such a overused word, especially since 2019. Sometimes I really wonder. I mean, I was looking at my website today and I was really thinking to myself, is it the right thing to say that we are a sustainable accessories brand? What does it even mean? So let me just rewind back a bit. I have been a corporate minion all my life. I spent 18 years in the HR space, hospitality, banking, worked across industries. And when you work in HR, you pretty much work with blinkers on your eyes, right? You are very focused with what you do. And sometime late 2019, I wanted to kind of start out and start something of my own. And my father actually has a leather export house, which is one of the oldest export houses in Kolkata, some 45 years old. Like every other Indian family, when you say, I want to start business, the father will say, come and join my business. What were you doing a job for anyways for so long? So for example, we have a lot of plants at home. I was at that point researching on, can I do some kind of drip irrigation, because my maid would come and pour buckets of water and it would really bother me. For making festive clothes for my daughter, instead of buying something new that she would wear only once, could I take something of mine and repurpose it for her? Those little things were happening. So that's when I got thinking to say that, is there a better way to do my dad's business? It actually started from there. And I said, are there other alternatives to leather? And I started looking and I started reading and I started researching, and I found so much that I obviously knew nothing about. It just so happened I kind of put all that research together. I went to my dad. I said, hey, you know what? Leather is going to go in some time. It's not sustainable. And there are all these new materials that are plant based, which is very low in impact that I have. Can we work on it? So he hears me out and he says, great research, but I have a business that makes money. I have built it over 45 years. So this ain't going anywhere anytime. So I said, okay, fine. So, but I was so, how should I say, I was so fascinated by the options available today that I said, okay, let me start something of my own. And that's really where Beach started. And when I started a year and a half back, I used to very proudly say that we are a sustainable accessories brand because we work with plant based. But 1 year down the line, after having read and learned and grown in the business today, just using the right materials don't make you sustainable. I was thinking what Shamla was saying today. Sustainability is almost like a filter. It's a filter you use to every decision you make in the business, be it materials, be it process, be it manufacturing, be it are you going to outsource your staff or get them in house? Will you pay them right? Every business decision has to kind of pass through that filter to say, is there a better way of doing it? Or are we doing it the right way? So I am slowly moving towards saying we are a conscious business. We try and do some things right. That doesn't make us 100% sustainable, but we are trying. And it's a journey. I mean, sustainability is not 0 or 1. There's a lot that's in between that. So that was a very long answer to your question.
But definitely a good one, ma'am. I really want to know, like, I have seen that your profile speaks about the safety. You're in that board which is doing the authorization for these things. Now, as a person, you're from IIT. So, what from where you have started with your college, and then how did you really end up very much in this field? Like, what made you do it? Like, pretty much the same question like Miss Arundhati, but I want to understand, like, because it was a very interesting profile which I saw, which could actually help a lot of our students. There are a variety of them.
Thanks a lot for giving this opportunity. It's a pleasure to connect to all of you and be here in this virtual platform with all of you. I started my journey with the organization NGO Art of Living, and I was very much connected with yoga and Ayurveda, more sustainable way of living, actually, wherein you have something which is very closer to the nature. So I started applying few small things in my lifestyle so that I can actually live a more sustainable life, going to a more natural plant-based diet or going to a more natural diet, and then following a lot of practices of Ayurveda which can help sustain your good health and as well as which can help to retain the environment. I actually had this sense that we do not have any planet B. We don't have a copy-paste option available with us which can undo the situation we are right now. What we hear mostly right now here is climate change, coral reef, global warming, soil erosion, very different changes into rainfall patterns. And all these things have actually rang bell for me. I was totally actually shocked when I understood that we have to reverse all this where we are standing right now. We have to actually put efforts to reverse this now. To my opinion, actually, sustainability was something which was very close to my heart, which was something which I wanted to devote my life for. I wanted to work for. So it's kind of a passion for me actually right now. So I'm lucky that I have got a job also in the same in the industry and in the same profile, so that I can actually to do my bit for this environment, for this planet, so that we don't need to actually go and search for another planet for our next generations. Whatever we have got from our forefathers, we actually give it in the same way to our next generations also. So I have actually started learning a lot about sustainability, reading a lot about sustainability. I have done few certification courses. I'm also pursuing now one certification course from the University of Cambridge into sustainable business development. So for me, like sustainability, as I have learned from the definition from UN, which says that we have to complete our own needs without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. So that is sustainability for me. It could be anything which actually makes your three bottom lines, social, economical, environmental requirements. I know that there are a lot of challenges into that. There are a lot of roadblocks on the way. But we have to keep this in mind that it is a 12 trillion US dollar business case now. As per a study from BSDC, keeping the 17 SDG goals in mind, they have actually told that if one corporate starts a sustainable way, innovation and the concepts which are coming right now, and they start following it, so it is a 12 trillion US dollar business case. So it's something which is actually even bigger than what we think about. Why sustainability is a buzzword now? Like I have heard from Shyamala or Arundhati, they are actually starting up. It's a buzzword. They're starting their business, keeping the sustainability as a focus in their mind. Because that is the way forward for us. So many new technologies are coming up. I have also learned a lot about the circular economy, as Arundhati was also talking about the recycling their garments or kids' garment, or using more sustainable material into the process. So what is circular economy? We know that the natural ecosystem is both source of our raw material and it is a sink of our waste. We are actually putting a lot of waste into our environment. But today our economies have become so large that we have to question the wisdom to extract more and more from our environment, dumping more and more material in our environment. And this economy, which we are actually presently following, is a linear economy. The concept of circular economy is very contrasted. It aims to radically reduce the extraction of raw material and production of waste. It actually does this by recovering and reusing as many of the products and material as possible in a systematic way over and over again. Should circular economy something which is make, remake, use, reuse? And there are various examples which I'm seeing. Various brands are also following this. Like H&M has started following, installing a recycle machine into their Stockholm store to actually get all the post-consumer used garments and then create a new product out of it and then sell it so that it doesn't go to the landfill, reduce the waste, reuse it. So there are a lot of concepts which have come up, and then I have started actually working and correlating it with the industry, and then it actually came out as a very, very good business opportunity for me as well.
I wanted to ask Miss Lavanya. So I'm a very big fan of sustainable architecture. And I really find it very inspiring when somebody really takes up the very non-traditional route of going in towards sustainable practices in, architecture especially. And I really wanted to understand, there are so many, like one of the main problems or roadblocks we could say, which we face as designers is like how to really design without that boundary, right? We have limited amount of resources that we collect, and the limited resources are sometimes not sustainable materials, so or like they're not eco-friendly materials. How did you try to derive it and work around it? So it would be very important for us.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. There's a big contradiction to what you said, or rather, I'd like to contradict what you said. There is really no limitation, right? So, in terms of when you say that there are only limited materials available out there is not. What is limited is our thinking and the mindset with which we've been doing or living the lives that we've been taught how to lead. And just like all my friends here, Shamla and Arundhati and Rashmi spoke about, it is exactly that tension with which you approach the profession, any kind of profession, including architecture, is with the idea that if I'm doing this, how lightly am I treading on the planet Earth by doing this? And that's all. So it's with a conscience and doing it consciously is how we think about everything you do in life. So if I'm wearing these pair of earrings, how and who has it hurt? Where has the material come from? Where will the material go once I have used it and I will no more need it? Is the thought process that needs to come into play. So when I start thinking about material for construction as well, you think of the region that it is from. You look at the context, what is the most easily abundant resource, which was always used traditionally. So take an education from our traditions, because that has a whole lot to offer us always. The second is looking at the local craftsmanship and the local skill set and the laborers, the people who are engaged in physically into the work, and therefore also look at it from the perspective of how is doing this adding value to their lives. We live in a country where we have a huge population, are a socially driven country. We need to think about not just capitalism, but looking at how anything or any activity adds value to the lives of people that are engaged in that activity, and look at it from the perspective of what is easiest, what is climatically right and appropriate. Does this design or this material fit and suit the climate? When it is summer, why do you wear cotton? And why do you want to wear the thicker materials in the winter? There's already a common sense that we all have, and all we have to do is adopt similar psychology to building, design, and construction as well. In fact, the minute there's a shift in the thinking, you realize that everything is so much easier than we've made it to be. Unfortunately, a whole lot of our lives are driven very corporationally, and that is also with the education system. And there's the corporation that teaches you that steel and cement are the most appropriate materials. They give strength. So you will see that Ambuja with the Ambuja cement and that fellow with this big muscles on the back of the bus when you're driving down the road. And therefore your mind is continuously fed with this information that this is strength and this is the best thing that you can have for the purpose of building a home. The reality being it is a non-renewable resource. And that is what you learned in school also. But you very happily forgot that because that was not repeated as information through your life. What was repeated was that this is strong, this is best, this is the only method of doing what you're doing. The fact is that's not true. You don't always have to rely on a McD burger to fill your tummy. You can cook at home, and cooking at home can also begin with you growing something on your own and then cooking it, right? And the satisfaction and the joy experienced in that kind of a process is not as highlighted as it has been post the pandemic right now. So that is the process of thinking that we adopt for the buildings that we design and build as well. Looking at where is it, what is the climate that affects this building, what is its local influence in terms of even socially, how is it adding value to the environment and the people, and how is it going to benefit the human being that is going to live inside as well, in terms of financially as well as energetically.
So, Ms. Arundhati, I wanted to come back to you. There is an existing framework which is happening, right? And there is your industry, they are contributing towards some kind of problems towards the world. Can you try to elaborate on what they are doing and how differently you are actually doing this right now?
I'm assuming a lot of fashion students out here already know those facts, that we are the second most polluting industry. About 1 truck of waste garments is emptied every second. When I was listening to Rashmi, I was thinking, she spoke about H&M. A lot of companies do, and not just H&M. H&M, Zara, a lot of the big fast fashion brands is they fool us into thinking that, hey, listen, if you return your clothes, we will do something with it, and therefore you will feel less guilty and you can go and shop, and they'll give you a voucher and they'll say, hey, listen, you've contributed to a green planet, go shop with us a little more. Yes, they do have that store in Stockholm. Yes, where they are doing things. H&M is trying to do a lot of small things. They moved a lot to plant-based designing, etc., etc. Just explain this about fashion. Recycling is a very expensive and tedious process, because when you have clothes that are made out of blends of different fabrics, so if you have a cotton and polyester blend, to recycle it, you actually need to separate the cotton from the polyester. It's expensive, it's tedious, it's time consuming. Brands don't want to do it. So they pack it all up, and they put it together, and there is this $1 billion second-hand clothes industry where it all goes. So it'll find its way to Ghana, Haiti, closer home, it'll find its way to Philippines or somewhere where it becomes a large market, where again, they will open it up and they will start seeing, can we sell it in the second-hand market? 40% of what gets sent out of developed nations to these countries does not get resold. It gets trashed and thrown. I have come to believe and understand that sustainability in fashion, and for all the fashion students who are listening out there, it's an oxymoron. Fashion cannot be sustainable because you are producing more and more and more. So let's assume tomorrow a fast fashion brand decides to junk polyester and goes completely organic cotton. So my first big question is organic cotton sustainable? The answer could be yes and no. It doesn't use pesticides, so yes. Still consumes a lot of water. Does that make it sustainable? It's a big question mark. Same thing you see a lot of stuff out there today which says, I was once a plastic bottle. So recycled polyester is becoming quite the rage. When you use recycled polyester, the carbon emissions are 1/4 of regular polyester. So yes, sustainable. But when you wash recycled polyester t-shirt, it will still leave out a lot of microplastics into the water. Sustainable? No. So sustainability, especially in the fashion space, I think is a very, very gray area. There is no one answer. There is no easy answer. I have concluded the easiest answer is to buy less. So it might sound like a death knell to all the fashion students who are wanting to step into fashion and set up brands and sell more and do more. Honestly, what you already have with you is the most sustainable piece of clothing you own. I know I'm saying this as a brand owner who's trying to sell and perhaps even axing my own foot and my own business, but that is the truth of this business.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask Ms. Shamla was, we have our students on their projects right now, like some interior students, some fashion students. They all want to actually take up. Some of them have this theme known as elemental bliss, which is basically coming back to nature and talks about all these green practices. Can you tell us some advice on how they should look it up and what kind of resources that they could go to understand about this?
Sure. I'll take from where Lavanya left and what she was talking about concrete and steel, Now, this whole advertising business and what even Arundhati says, like what they put out there, eventually also becomes very aspirational. So there is this huge population in India, which is in the rural area, right? And you are making them feel that they are getting upwardly mobile only when they use this concrete. They so don't need. It is draining the economy, all right? And they're not even living in the right environment. So for students also too, like when I keep repeating and saying mindset or lifestyle change, is first you have to understand who is your clientele, what is the kind of environment they live in, and what is it that they require. I mean, in every single way, the kind of practices, I don't know how we developed over the years, has been like a disaster. I mean, you choose your material within that 5-10 kilometer radius of where you live. I mean, that is what is going to sustain you, right? So why do you have to go looking for, sustainable material, green material? Just look around you. I'm like such a huge part of Triple ID, which is the Institute of Indian Interior Designers, where most of us are architects. It's so important that you use platforms now, because individually you can do only that much. So you use platforms of various associations that you are part of to influence your professionals. How to, like now in Bangalore, for example, we have so many government schools, all in such dilapidated state. First of all, you're going to educate a bunch of students who have not even experienced what it is to have hygienic space, right? You work from there. Now, how do you get them to? Nobody has the resources, right? Nobody has the money to plow into this. So what is the next thing that we decided we would do is create what we call as the social warehouse project. Each of us designers, we all know, Lavanya definitely knows that at every site, we have so much of excess material. Either we have pulled out the old materials, it could be flooring, doors, windows, wash basins, commodes, so many things that we pull out. Now, why dump it somewhere and create a debris? The world anyway has apparently 30-40% of the construction material ends up as a landfill, which is anyway causing a disaster. So what is it that you can do? You upscale it, upcycle it, and reuse. I mean, we are developed only up to that level. There's a lot of scope to use what we already have. Like Arundhati said, take less, right? So in our industry, so that's how they can apply their mind. You don't have to go looking for, what material is available. First, see what is it that I'm going to inherit. If you take up a job, is there an old building there? How much of it can be recycled, upcycled? Yeah. If it cannot be, can it be, reused someplace else? So it's less is more is what I'm saying. That somehow we have to figure how you stop manufacturing more and more things. You can use what is there. There's a huge industry even there, even when you recycle, upcycle and use it. Yes, I know that there has to be a lot of R&D. Like she said that, about the plastic and, making T-shirts and washing it and adding more pollution. Yes, for that you need proper R&D to move forward. But as students, since you don't have access to all of that, at least keep that mindset, see what is around you, see what people have used, and try to improvise on that.
So since we talked about R&D and we have someone who is specialized in that, Ms. Rashmi, you are involved with a lot of, you are involved in the safety insurance of a lot of materials. So how are the categories? What do you really select and what are the categories on how you classify materials? Is there any specific set of it based on our theme today?
Basically, along with the material, I would also like to talk about the long-lasting products. In textile, it's very difficult to design and produce a product which is long-lasting, because we know an apparel can last only for 5 years, or if it is a good quality, or 10 years if it is even a best quality. in the world. So it cannot last more than that because textiles have that nature of wear and tear. But still, if we can actually take care of few parts, like we are talking about fast fashion, we don't talk about the fast fashion, but we talk about a more durable product. And keeping product designing in a mind with a long-lasting product, like Ellen MacArthur Foundation has already worked with few of the brands like Levi, Gap, H&M, Diesel. They have actually worked on a project called jeans redesign. So they have actually tried to create a denim which may last longer, which will have a good properties to stay longer after many washes. And that many washes, we are talking about around 35 to 50 washes. We have to be very careful when we are selecting a material. There are always comfort level is also involved with the textile, with the apparel when we talk about, because we have to make sure that consumers are comfortable wearing that clothing. And also it should have that long lasting zest attached with it. How can we do that? How can we actually have a long lasting product? There are two ways. Keeping the product for longer use to increase its durability, that's only one way. And the second is we give a second, third, and fourth life to the product. That would be the second way, which we are actually already talking about: reuse, recycle, or upcycle. That's the only way we can do it actually. Refurbish the garment and resell it. That's the second way. So the product life can be extended to maintain the upgradability and to make it repairable. That is very important. Like I'm talking about not into textile, it has started so much into the fashion industry. It is still, there's a long way for us to go. But into electronics, it has already started. I hope that you have heard about a company which is Fairphone. So they produce a phone which is actually, along with the phone box, they even give a screwdriver. You can open the whole phone. Every single part of the phone can be opened and repaired and changed, even from a common person also. We don't need an expert to open that phone and change it. So if you want to upgrade your phone's camera, you can actually get a camera from outside and you can replace the camera and upgrade your phone. So the concept of designing should be in a way that I would actually talk about these 6 concepts for product designing, which might actually probably help students to understand how we can create a long lasting durable product, which will be more sustainable. As we are already talking about this, that these products will be more sustainable as they are lasting for longer time. We are not actually extracting a lot of resources and raw material from the environment, which I already talked about earlier. So that first is design for trust, about creating product that will be loved, liked, and trusted. So it is very important that you design something which is trusted. You use the material which are already trusted by the consumers. Second is design for developing the product which is low wear and tear. You have to keep in mind that the product which I am designing will have low wear and tear so that it lasts for long. Design for standardization and compatibility. There is a standard measurement for every specific product. So you design it as per that standardization so that you have to upgrade it, you have to change it or repair it. Any of the part you have to maintain it so you get it easily. And it can be replaced and changed very easily so that it is lasted for longer time. Designed for ease of maintenance, and it is easy to maintain, it is easy to repair, it is easy to keep it in a tip-top condition. You don't need to put a lot of efforts to maintain that specific product. The fifth one I would say is designed for upgradability. As I talked about Fairphone already, they are actually giving a chance to the consumer to upgrade your own cell phone by your own wish or way, whichever way you want to do it. So you should keep this in mind that if this product has lasted its own life cycle, then how it can be upgraded to the next level, how it will adapt you the future expansions. So keeping that in mind when you design it. And the sixth and last thing is design for disassembly and reassembly. So you have to make sure that it can be disassembled easily and it can be reassembled easily. So the specific product which the consumer is using, they will not have problem to reassemble it when they are moving somewhere, or they will not have problem to disassemble it somewhere when they have to actually maintain it, or they have to refurbish it, or they have to reuse after its life cycle completion. So these are the points I think if we keep it in mind and the material we select based on all these 6 concepts will definitely help you to create a more sustainable product, which would last long and which would also be used with bare minimum resources, not extracting more resources from the environment and not causing more harm to the environment.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. So my next question is to Ms. Lavanya. So one of the biggest, arguments which comes up is the cost versus sustainability, or cost versus green practices. Can you weigh us on what you think about the same?
The minute that you work with nature, it is bound to become cheaper. But that is also one of the biggest killers of this ideology of sustainability. Again, there is a mindset that we like everything that is expensive. We prefer everything that is unavailable to us otherwise. There is this aspiration, like Shamla was pointing out, of the city dweller to want to be have a home like the villagers, but not really a hut per se, and vice versa, the one living in a small town wanting to look like a city dweller's house. The funny part is that it is cheaper, but what you really do end up spending more, or you want to be able to add your expenditures on is the labor component. You're allowing for somebody from a socially lesser fiscally or economical background to be able to step up the ladder a little more, because they are going to be, you're spending more on them rather than the material. I mean, that is all that there is about. It is not expensive, unfortunately and fortunately. In fact, if it was very expensive to have anything green, all of us would be already doing it long time back. Because it's cheaper, we're not doing it.
You know what? I want to come back to Ms. Arundhati. I want to ask you, what is your advice that you would give to our young designers over here? So many of them have joined. What do you think they will have to take back from this session?
Let me start by saying, inevitably, if you're stepping into the space of fashion today, and you're going to step out maybe this year, next year, whenever you'll pass out, you can't run away from sustainability as a word or a phrase or a fact. You'll have to deal with it. But what I would urge you to do is, firstly, don't oversimplify it. There is no simple one answer definition to what sustainability really means. It could mean different things. Let me give an example of the fashion space only again. There is this whole movement on cruelty free, vegan. Everybody's saying vegan leather is sustainable. My question is, if leather is a byproduct of the meat industry, and that leather is going to get thrown away anyways, there is an argument that it is sustainable. Otherwise, it is going to find its way to. What is not sustainable is perhaps the tanning process, because it has too many chemicals. It is, so today people are doing chromium tanning, chemical free tanning. It could be sustainable. Leather lasts forever. You buy a good leather bag, it would last you 10 years. If you don't want to change your bag every season, that bag is good to go. What is so non-sustainable about leather is a question. Saying me, who is on the other side of the planet, propagating plant alternatives to leather. The same way there is an argument on vegan leather, right? Okay, very sustainable because it has got nothing animal to it. But it has a huge plastic component to it. Most of the vegan leather before plant-based leather came along was PU-based or PVC-based. What is sustainable about it? Point I'm making here is that you have to come up with your own definition. Read, research, understand. Do not go by any one definition that is available on Google or a website or somewhere else. Figure out what resonates with your belief system. Is upcycling sustainable? Of course. Is recycling sustainable? Of course. Is plant-based dyeing sustainable? Of course. Is working? All of it is. But what is your comfort? What do you believe in? Is the niche you'll have to carve out for yourself? Because I can tell you this, even in the next 15 years to come, there is going to be no single definition to sustainability in the fashion space. That's my view on that. In my experience of working, and I've worked for some 20 years now, it's a very evolving thing. You come out with something, you dabble in a few things, you learn a few more things, then your way you feel about it changes, then you do a little more, then your perspective changes. I think that's okay. If every two years also you want to take a pause and reevaluate what it means for you to be a designer in that space out there and how do you want to define it, you should take that time to do that. But the space needs thinking designers, It needs people who can go out there and do something meaningful without compromising on the aesthetics of fashion. I don't think we have enough of those designers out there today. So try and be one of those designers, is what I'd say.
Thank you, ma'am. And I also want to ask Ms. Shamla also, because you are coming from the other side, the interior design architects. I want you also to weigh in on the same question. What would be your advice to our students?
You have to educate yourself to educate your client. As designers, for us, whatever our profession is based on our clients' needs, right? So if you want a lucrative profession for yourself, you need to have a solid client base. And then when they come to you, you need to give them what they are asking for. But, I've had enough experience and I know that most clients are open to being educated. Why we don't want them to use. Like stone is a natural product. Fine. So that there is marble. Now, then you want to suddenly jump and insist that I want Italian marble. So you create all that carbon footprint because it's coming from wherever. Okay. So you have to you can't always totally block them, because if they have the wherewithal and the monies and everything, they are going to say, anyway, it's already landed over here and why can't I use it? Okay. So that's why you try your best. When there are other alternate, nice aesthetic products around, why do you want to use it? Italian marble, when you use, the beauty part is whatever, but it's a porous material. Okay. And the amount of time and energy and money you spend to maintain it, you have some amazing green marble in India, you have such amazing Kota stone. So if you can give them, as a designer, if you can give them an aesthetic product, you can get them to change their mind. So it is about, first, it's for you, how you're going to give them. Ultimately, why do they come to a designer? They could have gone to a contractor, right? They come to a designer. The topmost thing is that we're going to give them a foolproof functional space and aesthetics. No compromise on aesthetics. So if you can create that data bank of aesthetics for them with the material that is available, I'm sure they are open to, accepting that. So we have to become that kind of a designer. I think it's a lot about first educating yourself. All of us will not have the wherewithal for R&D. So we have to read up. And fortunately now, it's a very informative world and information comes in easily. If you have maintained yourself or you've managed to upgrade yourself there, you can use the most basic material and provide the end result to your client. So it's upgrading yourself as a designer and using the most sensible, sustainable material.
So now we are going into the second segment, which is our Q&A. We already have a question up here. How can we use sustainability within an office space?
There are so many sustainable choices in simple things like use of paper. Maybe you can
send less emails.
Yeah,
I think
zero use of paper.
Send an email to the person who sits across you. Please just walk up and have that conversation. It'll also help you build human connect. I think one of the things that really irks me is when I go to offices and see plastic bottles. Do away with that completely. That list is very long. I think just switch off lights on your floor or in your bay if you're not there. Do not feel the need to stay back after 6:37 till 11 o'clock in the night in office. Not necessary. This is a long list.
I'm assuming that Madeline's question was more in context to interiors than the physical space and using of office. To answer that, as an office, look at how much you what are the materials that you're using, why. For example, the office that we have, we decided very consciously to not have a glass facade, though it was a commercial space, and instead decided to have a plant facade so that it cools air that comes in. At the same time, we did not need to have air conditioning, an alternative way of cooling the office. We also ensured that the materials with which we made or had the office were either upcycled or they were materials that were either discarded and we reutilized them with a little labor involved, or we just ensured that we reutilized everything that we had old. In fact, we have furniture pieces in the office that are almost 15 years old, and we refuse to discard them unless they're absolutely finished or demolished. So there is a lot of sensibility and sensitivity that can go into play, and the same thinking philosophy in terms of where the material comes from, what is going to happen to this material post it's lived its life, how long does it survive or not. These are the questions that you want to answer and then be able to use the materials to be able to build with.
So we have another question. I think Ms. Rashmi can answer this. So Gajanan has asked, which is better, a recycled material or a natural material?
Quick answer, natural material. Anything that means recycling also uses resources and energy, and therefore you want to avoid recycling as much as possible. You ideally want to use something that can be directly used as it is without having to do too much to it. And the more that kind of thinking comes in, the more sustainable anyways everything will be.
I would just like to add one more thing. Natural material definitely are very good. We have to also see to it that how the natural material been actually cultivated, I would say. We are talking about organic cotton. So organic cotton also used less pesticide, but it uses more water. So probably we might have to go to a further one step ahead to the organic to regenerative cotton. So we are not talking about sustaining it. We are talking about regenerating it. We are actually utilizing the carbon available into the atmosphere and sequestering it into the soil, holding the soil erosion, improving the soil life, and then also we are regenerating whatever is required. So something like that, which is actually regenerative or organic, would definitely be a good option. But I would not say that recycle is not a good option. Recycle, when it goes to landfill, rather than thrown into the landfill or thrown into the sea and affecting the marine life, if we can pick up that and we can recycle it and utilize it in some or other ways, it's always good. But the first preference should be natural fiber. If you are designing something which is best with natural material, it's super. But if you are actually trying to be little sustainable and try to explore new opportunities and new options, then you can also think of recycled material.
We have another question. Mr. Pramod Adhikari has asked us, can we apply something from the design sensibilities of our ancestors to restore the earth close to something that they lived in? If yes, what is the one thing it should be?
I would say you visit Hampi then, or visit the old all the heritage archaeological sites in India. You would understand it very well. How they did it with very minimal resources available with them, and they constructed so huge thing or so sustainable thing that it is sustaining now also. It is so long lasting that it is standing now also and telling its story to us.
My answer to the questions, of course, Rashmi's thought process is absolutely bang on. Ancestral, everything needs to be looked at, and a lot of things to be learned from everything that happened traditionally by our ancestors, be it food, be it clothing, be it the way they lived, the thinking philosophy. But I have one sad news, that the earth can't go back to what it was. The whole excitement of being on the earth, planet earth, is that it has never been just the same. There's nothing like constant. There's never going to be exactly the same earth wherever, so with the dinosaurs and the pre-dinosaur age, right? So there's no point in wanting to go back anyways. There's only the aspect of going forward and being progressive. You don't have to become extremely pessimistic and sad about the whole idea of what there is, because everything is here for a reason and a purpose, and it is a part of a cycle of evolution. So it's all right for us to evolve and learn, to be able to come up with whole new ways and ways of living as well. We don't have to go back into time. I think that is one thinking that seems to, a lot of the youngsters seem to get very upset about the idea that, oh my God, we are doing what nonsense to this earth. You don't have to go back in time. We're only going to move forward, and whatever that is.
Unfortunately, we are almost coming to the end of our webinar. Time runs so fast, and we have spoke about a lot of things today. We have spoke about how sustainability as a concept is very personal to each one of them. Each one of the panelists has spoken certain aspect of their career, of their personal life, that they feel that they have contributed in a certain way. We also went through things like how simple it is to start with sustainable practices. Of course, the other aspect is that it's always changing. Now, what we are right now, what we think is sustainable, might not be something that someone else feels like. It will keep continually to grow over time, and it will have different philosophies over time. and what each one of us are here, and we have different approaches to this particular topic, which is why, I hope the students and whoever has joined us, all our faculties and students, I hope they are able to take away something which was very, very precious to them. Maybe a new idea, a new person, a new project, anything that really, inspired you. I want to thank all of you personally for coming to this webinar. And we are very happy that we have been able to host this successfully. And all our students are also very thankful for listening to your words. We are very much privileged, I would say. We have a very, very talented panel who are sitting. And Ms. Lavanya has put out some of her contact details, so you can contact her through this chat message, whatever is there. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you
Thank
have
so
learned
much.
something.
And hoping that soon
Thank
we will have some live interactions with the students.
Sure, ma'am. We are working
Thank you
on
so
it.
much. Wish you best luck to everyone.
Thank
For all
you.
the
Thank you, Arundhati, Lavanya, and Rashmi. It was amazing meeting all of you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.